Good morning and welcome to this week's Autism News. There are two stories out of Indiana that I saw this week. The first story is out of Indianapolis, where a 7-year-old boy on the autism spectrum, whose IEP says that he is supposed to be in the presence of an adult at all times, managed to somehow elope from his school, and after eloping he was struck by a car. Thankfully he did survive, but he sustained major injuries. His mother said that when she arrived she could see his skull. He required 50 stitches, he had a concussion, and was bruised from head to toe. His mother told news stations that he's supposed to have curb-to-curb service, where he's picked up in the morning at the curb and where he's brought home and dropped off, which is what we used to have with Maggie. Basically, I would walk her out and hand her off to the bus driver, and then when she got home, the bus driver would literally hand her to me, so that someone always had their hands on her, so there wasn't a chance for something like this to happen. The school wouldn't speak on camera to reporters, but they did give a comment off camera to local stations saying that he had broken away from a staff member and that he ran out of the school building, and that when he ran out of the school building they then called the police. As a parent of a child who regularly eloped and who last year regularly eloped not just out of her school building but off school property, and had paras who chased her down and brought her back and teachers who chased her down and brought her back, I have so many questions. That description that I have seen in reports is really disturbing, because the picture I have in my head when I read the reports is of him running out the door and them stopping and calling the police. I'm hoping that's not how it happened. The school did say that they followed proper protocol, but they were not willing to share what the proper protocols were. I don't know which is better. I don't know if it's better if he got away from them, if they chased after him and he was able to escape from the adults that were watching him, or if he got out the door and they just let him go and called the police. I really don't know which is worse. So there's a lot of details missing in this, and I do understand that a child can elope and that accidents happen, but when you have a child that has in their IEP that they need a person with them watching them at all times, this is just an extremely disturbing story, and I'm really thankful that he survived. The other news coming out of Indiana is that Anthem, Indiana's largest insurance provider, is severely cutting the rates that they are willing to pay autism therapy centers. Starting on July 1st, they cut payments by 35%, and there's already not a surplus of therapy centers in the state, which is true in so many states. I know here there are wait lists for basically every single place that you talk to. Providers are saying that if the current rates continue to stand, a lot of therapy providers are probably going to end up going out of business in Indiana. Some providers are hoping that the Department of Insurance, state lawmakers, and even the governor will get involved to hold the insurance company responsible and get them to pay the former rate for therapy that was paid before, because generally when one insurance company does something and gets away with it, the other insurance companies quickly follow suit. Today I learned about a new resource that I had never heard about before called GapMap. GapMap has compiled 28,000 autism resource centers, basically everything from autism therapy clinics, educational supports, and diagnostic centers, and put them on a map. And the map shows something very interesting. One thing that it shows is that 80% of counties in the United States do not have an autism diagnostic center in them. On average in the US, people live about 22 miles from a diagnostic center. And that's with some people living much, much closer and some living much farther away. And these numbers show that there is a significant barrier to a lot of people to getting an autism diagnosis. The map shows that there's an abundance of resources on East Coast cities from Boston to Washington, D.C., and also around Chicago and LA, but that the rest of the country has huge regions, especially in the Midwest and West, that have very few autism resources available. West Virginia, Kentucky, and Maine had the fewest resources relative to their populations. The idea of the map was to get an idea of the state of things, and they really feel like they achieved that with that map. Now hopefully this information can be used to actually help people who are on the spectrum. A new law in Texas is going into place that could help prevent miscommunications between police and people on the autism spectrum. On September 1st, Samuel Allen Law is going to be going into effect, and this is a law that if a person gets a note from their doctor and they take it to the DMV, they will then have a code placed in the computer system that is associated with their license plate number. And if a police officer runs that plate number and goes to pull them over, a code will come up for the police officer that will let the person know that the person that they're pulling over has a communication difficulty and is on the autism spectrum, and that's what's going on, and that it isn't something else when they pull them over, that it isn't that they're acting in a suspicious way or all of the other things that could possibly go wrong. Police chiefs in San Antonio and Houston endorsed the bill, as well as the head of the Highway Patrol Division of the Department of Public Safety. It is said that law enforcement across Texas has really embraced this bill, and it was a low-cost bill, and it wasn't something like a card that could be easily misplaced or misconstrued when someone was reaching for it. It's something that the police will be able to say before they even approach the car. So it's going to stop. It has the potential to really do away with a lot of misunderstandings. I am really hoping we see this spread to other states because I think that this could possibly be really helpful. Last week, a study came out, and the study was very sensational. It said that children born by C-section have a 33% greater chance of being on the spectrum. However, this week, a lot of articles have come out pointing out that correlation does not equal causation, and that those statistics aren't quite as dramatic as they seem. The study was huge. It came out of Sweden. It gathered data from 61 studies about 20 million babies. So they had a ton of information. They concluded that birth by cesarean delivery was significantly associated with autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. I left out that part, but yeah, it slipped my mind. I was so focused on the autism part. It also showed an increase of ADHD by 17%. It's not the first time that researchers have seen a link between C-sections and autism. Prior studies have hypothesized that the possible reason could be the stresses with an emergency C-section. To evaluate this potential association, they looked at emergency C-sections and planned C-sections, but there was absolutely no difference between the two. 33% sounds like a really high number, right? One researcher from Telethon Kids Institute in Western Australia explained that it's really quite inconsequential. He said that when the prevalence for these conditions is already relatively low, 1% for autism and 7% for ADHD, this increase in the odds is not substantial. In the instance of autism, this is a shift in odds from a prevalence of 1% to a prevalence of 1.33%. So if you don't have a C-section, you have a 1% chance of your child being autistic. If you have a C-section, you have a 1.33% chance of your child being autistic. This change is not consequential and certainly does not call for any change in our clinical practice. It's also been pointed out that C-sections are often associated with preterm birth, which is also commonly associated with autism. Basically, what they're saying is that there are a lot of things that lead people to have C-sections, and that a lot of times those causes that lead to C-sections could also be things that contribute to increasing your chances of being on the spectrum. Without accounting for these other factors, doctors can't really say that it's the C-section that is increasing the chance that a child will be on the autism spectrum. Has there been any news local to you or news that I didn't mention here that you heard this week that you would love to share? I would love to hear about it down in the comments. If you like this video, we would love it if you'd give it a thumbs up, and if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.